I'm or just finished reading, a short story. If a stranger approaches you about carrying a foreign object with you onto the plane. It's a fiction story by Laura Kasishik, and I probably mispronounced the name, so here is the author's actual name. It was originally written in Plowshares, or published in Plowshares, but I'm reading it out of this book here, which is the 2007 Pushcart Prize 31 Best of the Small Presses. And great story. And one of the key elements of it is the main character, Kathy Bliss. Let me tell you who Kathy Bliss is. She is, I think, in her mid-30s. She's married. She has a child. Her husband is at home. He's kind of a house husband. She runs her own nonprofit. She's a bit on the naive side, but she's very socially concerned and socially aware. Now, I say she's a bit on the naive side because the story takes place at Boston's Logan Airport. She's waiting for a flight to Portland, and there's a man who approaches her. The man is asking her to bring something on a plane. He's a stranger, if he would do this favor for her. And the whole story is how she's in a constant state of denial. She's denying the fact that this person could be giving her something dangerous. She's denying the fact that he could be a terrorist or she could be working for terrorists unwillingly. And she's denying all that. Meanwhile, the warning signs are being broadcast over the PA system, do not accept anything from a stranger. So she's in this naive form of denial. And it's a great story that centers around this main character. An added element of it, for those of you who may not be from the Boston area, is she's flying to Portland. And from the Boston area, one of the first things that popped in my mind is Portland, Maine is where the terrorists first came into the United States on 9/11, leaving Canada and coming to the US. So it has a lot of amplifying information. That's how you write good fiction. In order to write good fiction, you have to have good characters. You can have the greatest plot line in the world, but if your characters aren't any good, if they're just stock characters, or if they're flat, or if there's really no personality to them, your fiction's not going to work. And that's why this story works. We can tell you a lot about Kathy Bliss. The reason why I tell you that is in light of today's parable that we see in our gospel readings this weekend. Let's take a look at how Jesus constructed this story. When we look at Jesus' characters, every one of his characters have some kind of a definition. We have the king. We have the rich man who is completely ignoring the poor Lazarus. We have the servant who refuses to forgive, although he is forgiven. So every one of his characters have something that we know right away. That's what makes today's parable so fascinating. And the reason is because we don't know anything about the man who is beset upon by robbers. We know nothing about him. All we know is that he is a man and he was set upon by robbers. We know more about every other character in that whole parable. We know there are robbers. We know there is a priest, a Levite, and a Samaritan, and an innkeeper. But of the man we know nothing. And there's an important point here, because what Jesus is trying to tell us by telling us nothing about the man is that the man could be anybody, and therefore if we're called to help a certain group of people, that group of people can be named anybody. Doesn't matter whether he's good or bad, whether he's rich or poor, whether he's doing something for the king or doing something for himself, a Roman or a Jew, it doesn't matter. The fact is, here is a man on the road set upon by robbers, and you can come up with an excuse not to help him, as the Levite and the priest both did, but there is none. Jesus is saying that we are called to be acting as the Father would if he came upon him and the Father would help him. And so that's the response we have here when Jesus is speaking to us in the whole parable of the Good Samaritan. There is nothing we know about this person except that he is in need of help, and Jesus says that's the qualification to give help. So imagine this, it's 10:15 on a Sunday morning. I'm about to do the 10:15 Mass. People are waiting for me, and it is my Catholic duty to celebrate Mass. If I don't do it, then we'll assume that I will not be able to go to Mass all day. So now, all of a sudden, I walk out of my rectory, and there is this body sitting in front of the rectory. Now I can help that person, but then I won't be able to do the 10:15 Mass. And therefore, I may not go to Mass for the day. People will be very upset. So my duty to God, it would appear, is to do the Mass. So I walk to church. That line of thinking, to just simply be doing what you think is what the Lord calls you to do and disregard the needs of someone else, was the line of thinking of the priest and the Levite. But obviously that makes no sense. Obviously we're called to serve God in the way he calls us, and at times that means we have to be caring about the necessities over what appears to be the obligation. Good example of this is the mother who can't go to church because her child is sick. Well, obviously the mother needs to be caring for the child, and no, it isn't wrong for her not to be in church when her child is sick. Or whatever the case may be, God calls us to be caring for others as a way of doing our role in also loving him. God bless you.